Hello there and welcome back. Now, earlier this morning, the Business Secretary told us that the appointment of Lord Mandelson as the ambassador to the United States was worth the risk. He was speaking to Trevor Phillips. Take a listen.
The timeline of events and who did what when really matters. The Prime Minister strenuously and vociferously defended the ambassador to the United States on Wednesday. But we know now that these emails, the text of them, was available on Tuesday. Now, I know you'll tell me the Prime Minister didn't read it till Wednesday, Wednesday night. But something is wrong here. Either the Prime Minister just didn't know, but somebody should have told him before he stood up before the House of Commons, or maybe he did know. Which is true?
The emails in full were not released until Wednesday evening.
No, we know they were in number 10 on Tuesday. Number 10 said this.
Number 10 had what was publicly available on Tuesday, which was extracts of emails, which were not in context, and they weren't the full emails.
No, they had the Bloomberg emails on Tuesday.
No, Trevor, they had what was public, which was extracts of the emails. And if you just let me just finish the sequence here. And immediately upon being alerted to extracts of emails, the Foreign Office contacted Peter Mandelson and asked for his account of the emails and asked for them to be put into context and for his response. That response did not come before PMQs, and then after PMQs, the full emails were released by Bloomberg in the evening. By the first thing the next morning, when the Prime Minister had time to read the emails in full, having had them in full, and reading them almost immediately of having them, Peter was withdrawn as ambassador.
Is your point here that Peter Mandelson essentially lied, or I think the expression now was economical with the truth?
I can't say what happened, but for whatever reason, the full content of the emails and the existence of those specific emails was not known. But let me just make this very clear.
Can I ask one other question?
We're talking less than 24 hours from seeing the full emails and Peter being withdrawn from Washington. This was decisive. The Prime Minister has always put the national interest first. He has done what is right for the country to deliver for the country. And as soon as the emails became public, he withdrew Peter Mandelson.
One thing that puzzles me, though, is that the Prime Minister, we now know this is true because that Number 10 said this, Prime Minister interrogated Lord Mandelson about the relationship with Epstein himself. This is one of the country's leading barristers. If he couldn't actually have got the information from Peter Mandelson before the appointment, who could? I mean, who failed here? Who failed here? Somebody must have failed.
Well, look, it comes back to this central point. There was a lot of information publicly. We knew that there was a relationship. We knew the relationship continued after he had been convicted. The decision was taken in the national interest to try and use the specific talents that he had, which were singular and outstanding. Now, all of the media, Trevor, had also the same information that we had at the time.
All of the media do not have the responsibility for appointment.
Well, the media has the responsibility for interrogating and also doing what it does, which is holding government to account.
And I'm pleased to say Trevor joins us now live. Morning to you, Trevor. I mean, that last point there, holding government to account, exactly what you were trying to do there with Peter Kyle. I'm taken by this line that they're sticking with, that it was worth the risk. It's the same thing that I was told by Douglas Alexander when I pushed him about this on Friday, that knowing what they knew about Lord Mandelson was just worth the risk of having him in post. When you're sitting across from Peter Kyle, what did you make of that defence and how long can that hold?
I think it's pretty much collapsed already, isn't it? I mean, look, there are a number of things here. I've got to confess, if you're reduced to saying the media should have known, then you're in quite a tricky place, aren't you? The media is not the government yet. Nobody expects us to be in charge. Nobody expects us to have the information that the government has. And the reason that all of this is now becoming catching fire again is not just because there's drama that all surrounds Peter Mandelson. It is really asking a set of questions about the way that government works. To start with, and what motivations of government are. To start with, as you say, Peter Kyle was giving the broad defence of the government actions by saying that there's always a risk in appointments, and in this particular case, because Peter Mandelson is a man of singular, I think, talent, he is the phrase he used, that the government had to weigh that against the risk that there would be something in his past that would come out that would embarrass both Mandelson and the Prime Minister, and that they took that risk. Well, we can now all assess whether we think that risk was worthwhile. There are many people, for example, Dorothy Byrne, who said, I think on this programme actually, that at the time that this was a risk that should not be taken, though I now see that there are a lot of people who at the time were lauding Mandelson's talent, who've suddenly decided that that isn't what they said at the time. And the other thing that is at issue is the manner in which this was done. And I think this may be the greater danger, certainly for Number 10 and Mr. Starmer. Peter Kyle couldn't tell me whether the Prime Minister spoke directly to Peter Mandelson, and I am led to believe that means he didn't. And that means that Mandelson, I imagine, will be pretty furious, and that this will not be a person that will go quietly. And that is always going to be a problem for any government. Someone with that profile and those political skills is not somebody of whom you want to make an enemy.
No, not at all. And I wonder, Trevor, from your experience of these sort of things, is it the sort of thing that Lord Mandelson would want to do, become vindictive at this point? I mean, the line from the government now seems to be that they were misled by him. Right, it's slightly changed as the days have gone on, and I think that's all because of the decisions that are going to be made about the sort of the severance payment and the rules around what happens when he leaves that position. Do you think it's likely that Lord Mandelson will try and get some kind of revenge on this Labour government for what's happened?
I don't think that he would see it in that way, and I don't think the money will be the issue. The issue will be that he will feel outraged at being held up as somebody who may have misled his employer, or somebody who behaved less than honourably or with less than complete integrity. And I suspect that what he'll want to do is to try to make sure that his name is cleared. Well, of course, that will mean, unless somebody comes up with a rather more convincing version of the timeline of events, that will mean that he will have to say that when Number 10 says he didn't give the whole truth, he will have to say, yes, I did, and they are besmirching my reputation. So I guess I have no idea, to be honest, what the truth is here, by the way. I don't suspect anybody else does, other than the people who were actually involved, who were in the room at the time. But unless and until they all agree on an account, this is going to rumble on. And the real problem for the government is not the soap opera of it. It is that on a programme like ours, 90 minutes, we devoted large amounts of time to this, relatively little to what is undoubtedly the most important issue for the government this autumn, and that is, what are they going to put in their budget? How are they going to deal with the economy? How are they going to fill the 40 billion or 50 billion black hole? This is their problem, that this is taking all of the oxygen away from the things they should be talking about.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Trevor, you and I are going to keep talking about it because it's still so fascinating, isn't it? Because, this idea of him being worth the risk, I wonder if it's worth the risk of this, of the airways being taken up by us talking about something that, as Dorothy Byrne put it, and as other people have put it in the past few days, was always going to going to happen with Lord Mandelson because of the fact, as you know, Trevor, as our viewers know, he has lost 2 jobs before, and there have been questions about some of the way that he does his business. Let's put it that way.
Well, yes, and I want to, if I may, enter a defence on behalf of journalism here. I am sure that the politicians will say, "Why are you spending so much time on this trivia? Why are you bothering about somebody who will not be in high office again? Why aren't you focusing on the important issues?" Well, here's my take on that. I spent a lot of yesterday afternoon out on that 150,000 person demonstration. And a very fundamental issue for most of the people I talked to, besides migration and so on, was their disillusion, despair, and in a few cases disgust with the political classes who they think do not tell the truth to them, aren't ready to confront the issues that they are concerned with. And the reason that this story becomes an issue for us to follow is that our viewers and people who write for newspapers, as I do, will get a shoal of criticism from the people who pay our wages and keep us in business if it appears that we are not trying to answer the questions that they're asking about trust in their politicians. So we're not going to keep this up because it's all fun. It is because out there, the people who pay our wages, who buy our newspapers, who tune into Sky News, say, we want to know because it is a matter of trust in our democratically elected leaders.
Yeah, absolutely right, Trevor. And again, a point I put to Douglas Alexander and Alex Burkhardt last week when this was all coming out, that this latest revelation, following on from Angela Rayner, this is all about the degradation of the politics in this country, and the voting public are seeing that firsthand. And as you point out, people on those marches yesterday are seeing that, and they're taking it really to heart. And it's for politicians on all sides to try and come up with some kind of solution to it. Look, so you had conversations with your panellists as well today. I just want to move us on slightly because I do want to play this clip from Michael Gove, which I think is quite revealing as to some of the way that the politics perhaps does work. Michael Gove, who admitted that he had lost a job when you put it to him. I thought that was quite a funny moment. Talked about the way that vetting happens in light of what happened with Lord Mandelson. Listen to what Michael Gove had to say.
Peter Kyle said that it was worth the risk, given Peter Mandelson's manifest talents. Didn't pay off, did it?
No. So to be fair to Keir Starmer and to the politicians making these decisions, the vetting process is not as rigorous as perhaps it should be. I remember when I was appointed Environment Secretary, after I was given the job, I was then asked by the ethics team, by the way, Michael, are you a vegetarian? It was considered to be the most significant question after I was appointed, when I was supposed to be interacting with the nation's farmers as to whether or not I actually ate meat. For the avoidance of doubt, I do. But more broadly, I think the reason why this story is consuming such interest is not just because of the magnetic nature, some might argue radioactive nature, of Peter Mandelson's personality. It's because there's so little else to say positive about the government. So personality questions fill the vacuum where a strong narrative or sense of purpose should be.
I mean, Trevor, it was kind of funny. It seems kind of frankly ridiculous, but I guess if he was a vegetarian, the farming lobby could say they had vested interests against them. I mean, who knows? I mean, and that was countered by your conversation with Lord Darroch as well, who talked about the vetting process. But it does reveal, doesn't it, I guess, something in the processes of all of this. I'm not entirely sure whether that gives any leeway to the judgment still of those who put Lord Mandelson in place.
Well, I'll tell you what the problem is that arose out of the interview with Peter Kyle, who, he's pretty unflappable, not a guy you can rattle easily. But I would say that the problem that is left out of what Peter Kyle said to me was that he seemed to be making the case that the vetting process around Peter Mandelson relied heavily on just two things. One is what Mandelson himself said, and the question there is, was he honest, not honest? Was he questioned effectively? Was he asked the right questions? And the second thing is that there were public sources that anybody, including the media, could have gone to. Well, I think the question I asked about that, what is the point of a vetting process for such an important, and by the way, it's not just diplomatic. The US ambassador has to deal with the negotiation of treaties that involve billions of pounds and huge numbers of jobs and so on. Mm-hmm. The importance of that job, the vetting process surely has to be deeper than reading the newspapers and talking to the bloke. You imagine that there would be, the intelligence services would be providing dossiers, that they would be investigating the person's background. They would be talking to friends. And I know that some of that has happened because it's happened to me. So the question that I think now is still there is, if the vetting process was thorough, how is it possible that the things that we now know were not known before Wednesday, and it had to rely on a media organisation to find these things out and give them to the Prime Minister? Now, until there's an answer to that, this will continue being asked about.
It most certainly will. Credit again to all the journalists who stuck with this story, because if it wasn't for getting that story out there, perhaps Lord Mandelson would still be in post. Trevor, those questions, as you say, will continue to hang. Really appreciate the conversation, Trevor. And I want to congratulate you and the team for the migration debate earlier in the week here on Sky News.
That is kind of you, Kamali. It's good to talk to you as ever.
Absolutely. Thank you, Trevor. We'll speak to you again soon.